Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Slot Leader. I'm joined by my good friend and my co-host Tom Flynn. This is episode, if I'm not mistaken, episode number 32, and there's a lot of things that have been going on this week, and I wanted to kind of cover those before we go to our interview and our guest. By the way, our guest is somebody very special and some a project on Cardano that I've been following for a long time, and quite frankly, I'm pretty impressed by their execution. If you know me on X, I am a guy who likes to follow teams that actually execute and deliver, not just talk. And I think this team has been one of the A teams in Cardano, and I think we definitely need to get more of them on board. I'm not gonna, basically hold you too much in a limbo. I'm gonna tell you what it is. It's we're gonna have an interview with the CEO of IAGON. It's a decentralized storage solution built on Cardano that has been taking a lot of it's been developing really fast and onboarding a lot of good clients especially on the institutional side. So when he comes on board, when we interview him, we're gonna dive into the background and how this project came into being. And as usual, we're gonna ask all the juicy questions around what differentiates them as opposed to like other storage solutions that exist and things like that. But before we do that, I wanted to catch up with my good friend Tom and basically talk about the markets before we go into the
Oh
interview
man,
section.
yeah. The topic of decentralized compute is a really interesting one, but the one that the generalized public doesn't really think about so much. But there are consistently these high-profile outages, right? We don't think about decentralized compute until AWS goes down. And there's so much news flying by that I don't often have time to dive deep, but I believe there have been a number of big outages recently, and even some things that are probably related to agentic AI that are happening. I don't know if it's like related to storage or anything like that, but we're seeing that happen more and more, and that's one of the big selling points for decentralized storage. But we all just rely on all these existing services so heavily. But when they go down, it affects the economy directly because so many people rely on these things. So it's kind of one of those things that's super super important, but most people, it's not something they think about day to day.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, one of the things that, if I remember correctly, a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, AWS went out and people were joking about the proof of stake, proof of stake not functioning really well because all the node operators are on the Amazon hardware. And, at that time, I think I was running a node, my nodes or whatnot, in a lesser known sort of target. So it all worked out well for me, but I think you definitely touch a very important point here that decentralized protocols don't function well when majority of their
Yeah,
coins or stake is on centralized locations. And but yeah, I mean that I'm sure that it's easier to have a fallback somewhere else in a different location. And I definitely, as a stake pool operator, I had those things on the personal level. And when I was working at Wave, we had contingencies. Let's say that our data center just goes bust somewhere in Virginia. We have a fallback in Singapore. It's completely different region, and
yeah,
the fallback usually works. Not sure if everybody else had those kind of setups, but anyway, it will be a great sort of topic to discuss on the storage level because storage is quite crucial for a lot of companies, and we'll definitely I'm definitely looking forward to asking those questions.
yeah.
But on
It makes
the
it
yeah.
makes me chuckle. It makes me chuckle a little bit too, right? Like being in Web3 as long as you and I have, and many other people, it's almost like not interesting to talk about decentralization anymore. Like you can hit it from a philosophical level, you can hit it from a very tactical level, but there are so many layers to it where you can claim that a network is decentralized because you have so many node operators. But if the majority of them are on AWS, there are so many slices you can do. You can talk about a network being decentralized, but then you have a key stakeholder who says one thing and affects the entire market, like Vitalik, recently coming out and saying about how the role of L2s is changing, and how that one statement trickled through the entire ecosystem of Ethereum. So it's an endlessly, I won't even say it's endlessly interesting. I'll say it's like endless to nerd out about. But just to claim something is decentralized, there are so many different layers you can slice it, and IAGON is definitely making a big contribution to that ethos.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think, being built on Cardano, which itself is one of the most decentralized sort of networks, alongside with, Apex Fusion, which is built on the same technology, is actually a good selling point. I definitely would like to ask Dr. Navjit about these kind of questions and see, how they're selling this technology to the outside world, and how the outside world sees the potential for decentralized compute and storage. But yeah, I wanted to kind of like switch the gears and see, talk about the developments in the industry. I think we've had a little bit of a setback with the Clarity Act. I think, there's progress to be made. It went to the floor, I think, or didn't go to the floor, or maybe one of the versions is on the floor, but Coinbase decided to kind of like veto it, quote unquote, and the discussions kind of fell back, into a previous stage where they have to hash out the sticking point, which is a yield on stake on stable coins. And my personal view is that banks, they don't give you anything these days. They hoard the cash, they charge you fees, they make money on your money deposits, and they pass on very like breadcrumbs basically.
Yeah.
And the crypto industry, especially the centralized exchanges, are giving the normal population an opportunity to earn money on their savings, which is orders of magnitudes higher than the traditional finance actually provides. Now, I'm not delusional about the motivation behind Coinbase doing this and trying to basically get to exempt or to allow the centralized exchanges to give rewards or interest on the stable coins. They are protecting their bottom line. But I think them protecting their bottom line is very well aligned with the usual consumer that would like to have more avenues. If I am giving more avenues to earn more money, I would like to be able to do that. So that's kind of happening in the background. I think yesterday the news came out that they have only 48 hours, not from the Coinbase side, that they kind of agreed on something, and they're going to have a final version of the bill coming out soon. And they're kind of running against the clock here because they want to get it out of the way as soon as possible before the midterms. And I'm hoping that we will have this legislation sorted out, and the retail investor gets another option to save. But yeah, banks are pushing back on that one, understandably.
Surprise, yeah.
Yeah, they want to protect their margins. Coinbase wants to protect their margins. I think there's some sort of an element of dynamism that I kind of like, because the industry is kind of like financial industries is being taken over by crypto in a way. I kind of cheer for the crypto side.
So I mean, it's kind of obvious in a way, right? When you step back, that now that the role of crypto is expanding into TradFi, that it would take some time, because banks are a big stakeholder in this process, and they have a very influential seat at the table.
Yeah.
How it plays out, like, we've been talking about this for a year, that blockchain and crypto is going to replace traditional banking infrastructure. So, I mean, looking down the road, doesn't it seem obvious that all banks will be digital banks? I mean, you know what I mean? Like a bank, that the way you think of your bank today will be more like interacting with Coinbase in the future than interacting with your bank, although it will have new features in terms of usability, right? It's gonna need to mirror the ease of use of your traditional banking website, but it'll be crypto in the back end in some form. And so, you know what I mean? Like ultimately it's gonna converge. So you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. I mean, it's this is where everything is going now. RWA is a really big sort of discussion topic. There's lots of developments going in that direction, and I think we are today IMF has issued a paper about tokenization of assets. IMF is a International Monetary Fund. It's one of the big sort of financial institutions, alongside the World Bank, where I used to work. The part of the World Bank. And when they come in with these kind of like papers, you definitely know that you're on the trajectory to mass adoption. And my personal view is that we are going to have a shortage of block space because this industry is huge. RWAs are huge. And there will be I think the value is going to accrue to those players that are like routers, that an entity wants to like move RWA from point A to point B, and they will kind of like calculate the best way to move that asset and which chains to use to minimize the cost of transactions and executions and things like that. I think those kind of products will probably pop up with the pressure for block space, and everything's going to be fine. I mean, of course, RWAs will have certain requirements for these blockchains, but anyway, I want to basically close this discussion and then open up the discussion with Dr. Navjit, because I think he's going to come online any minute now and talk about decentralized compute. But anyway, I wanted to kind of like shed some light on what transpired this week and discuss the implications with you. Thanks for joining us, and hope you enjoy the interview. Hi, and welcome back to Slot Leader. Today, we have a special guest, the CEO and founder of IAGON. It's a decentralized storage solution built on Cardano. I would like to introduce Dr. Navjit Dhaliwal. Welcome to the show. I really appreciate you taking your time and joining us today.
Appreciate you guys for having me. Glad to be here and happy to discuss anything IAGON related.
Awesome. So, Doctor, can I call you Dr. Navjit or Dr.?
Nav is fine.
Nav, all right.
It's perfectly fine. Let's not make it.
So yes, before we go into the technicals and go into the weeds, I always ask my guests the question about the background. What prompted you? I believe you're a dentist, right? What prompted you to create IAGON?
Yeah, well, actually, from high school days, I did programming in high school, so I did C++. So my passion in technology lies from there, like in terms of I always followed the news and making sure to keep up to date with the new technology that's coming out. And I came across Bitcoin in 2013. But the reason I went into dentistry is because my parents, being from an Indian background, you get a lot of pressure of being successful, especially in your career. So that, they pushed me into that field. I don't regret it at all. I've actually been, successful in my Web2 venture at that time. But in 2013, I came across the Bitcoin paper, the Satoshi paper, and then had a few reads. Obviously, didn't understand it right away, but was very intrigued by it and I read it over and over again. Finally, I said, okay, this sounds amazing. Actually, I want to do something here. And the idea came across in terms of using blockchain level access layer to make sure healthcare records were secure. Because being in my field, it's a lot of sensitive data that gets shared across different people. At that time, I worked in the private sector, and in the public sector is pretty much the same things, where doctors would, share sensitive information across WhatsApp and different other apps, without hiding names and birthdays and stuff. So I was kind of astonished by this. I was like, okay, why is this happening? This shouldn't happen this way, right? You should be, with patient client privilege is very important in practice. So I was under the theoretical stuff that we learned, didn't work that way in practice, and that's why I became interested in this idea. So the first idea actually surrounded around healthcare data, secure healthcare data, and making sure it's accessible through on-chain access. But over time, the idea evolved and became more generic as the co-founders came on board.
Oh, really? So it's actually the same company. So the company IAGON now was formerly working on healthcare records, and then you transitioned.
It never worked on healthcare records in the beginning, but the idea originated from my day-to-day job, which was as a dentist.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, I definitely recall in 2017. The name of the project escapes me right now, but there was an attempt to put the healthcare data on Ethereum blockchain, and I was a believer in that, because I definitely saw the potential of blockchain securing that data and creating privacy around it. I don't think that project went anywhere. Maybe it was too early to be successful, but in this day and age, right now, when we have competitors like Storage or, I think there's two, Airweave. How does IAGON differentiate itself?
Yeah, that was one of the first key things that we looked at when we approached the idea. Actually, when it was called Juno. Actually, we changed it to IAGON in 2017. But the idea started formulating in 2016 when I approached some other experts within the space, not in the blockchain space technically, but more in distributed compute and AI and other things that bring about the idea of IAGON into fruition, right? And first thing we saw when I did the research back in 2013, nothing around at that time, right? But in 2016, early 2017, there was a lot of things coming up. Ethereum was getting a lot of headway, and we started realizing that, hey, if we want to actually be in this space, we have to create something that's unique and not just recreate the same thing over and over again. So we realized, obviously, early on that a lot of these storage platforms are bringing on, but they didn't create anything unique in that sense. A lot of these, sometimes when you're first to the game, you make a lot of mistakes. And if you don't reiterate on those mistakes quick enough, then people surpass you. We had the idea to patent the idea, and that's what we did. What the unique part about IAGON is we learned the behavior of each node operator in different variables, which is important to the end user. So we learned the behavior in terms of performance, uptime, and a lot of these storage protocols do it now, but we thought about this early on. The different metrics that we learn, and we give a reputation to that node. And why that is important is eventually it's important for compliance, because if you know the location of the node, you can actually distribute the data, the shards of the data to a specific location and comply with the local regulations, because a lot of the regulations are based around geofencing. So that's an advantage for us early on. A lot of the things that some projects in the storage did it on-chain storage. We decided to do off-chain and focus on the blockchain side, on being on the access layer instead. So we created kind of like a tiered system, I would say, where you can distribute shards according to your preference as a user. So if you want a high performance node, depending on where and on a certain location, you can do so. And a lot of the enterprises actually favor this. And that's a lot of why early on, the storage solutions that even to this day haven't been adopted by enterprise because of regulation and compliance and a lot of things that they look at. If for example, Filecoin, they would never use Filecoin because the shards are distributed randomly. And let's say if a US enterprise would come and store data that could be partly in China, right? So this is not something that they want. This is a risk for them, even if that is encrypted or whatever, right? It's a high risk for them, and it's not what they want to do. So this allows for a lot much more compliance and adherence to current day-to-day use.
All right. So how does IAGON or decentralized storage solutions compare when it comes to performance with centralized ones? You know, the Amazons of the world, et cetera, or on the cost side. Now, why would somebody store the data on the decentralized sort of network rather than just going with AWS?
Yeah, so I like to. There's a few things that are advantageous for distributed storage. I know this has come up in terms of centralized. Also has this, they have one entity controlling all the storage, and it has happened in the past and also recently, where there's data leaks all the time. Right, it happens almost every couple of weeks, actually. Even to big institutions and social insurances and a lot of big companies have leaked. Even NHS in the UK had a leak in about, I think it was 2018 or 2019, if I'm not mistaken, where they had a huge healthcare record leak, right? So I like to use this analogy. First, obviously, there's a cost benefit. You can decrease your cost by up to 80%. Performance is something relative, but of course, performance currently, I would have to give it to centralized solutions because there's a lot of really good hardware setups already for data centers and whatnot. So hopefully distributed storage gets to that point where you can actually allocate to high performance data centers, where the data centers are actually part of the distributed network. So the performance might be even better because the geolocation, you can ping to a closer server that's within your vicinity rather than pinging a server that's in a certain location all the time, right? So better for gaming, better for everything else. But the main thing is privacy, security in a sense, right? So for example, using this analogy called Secure Lake, this is how I like to explain it, where you have for data center, for like centralized service, you have imagine a lake that has a fence around it. And if a hacker were to jump over this fence, he or she could swim in the lake and collect as many buckets of water or data as much as they want, and they could leak this, right? It's a very simplified way of explaining it. Using the same concept, you have the distributed service with on-chain access. So you have multiple, instead of one lake, you have multiple mini lakes, which also have a fence around it, but then they're completely frozen. Now, the frozen aspect is the blockchain access layer. So the only person that can combine those mini lakes and liquefy the lake is the person that uploaded the data with their private key. So that's where the on-chain access comes from, where there's no single person that only the uploader has access. There's no middleman that has access to the data.
Oh wow, this is an amazing way of describing it. I always thought about it and never could get an answer in my mind. So thanks for explaining it. Yeah, that's awesome. Tom, do you have any questions or?
Yeah, so many comments? Actually.
Yeah,
so
all right.
You already mentioned competitive pricing. You kind of dropped it there. So you said 80% less expensive than traditional storage. Maybe speak a little bit how you accomplish that.
Yeah, it's up to 80%, right? So it's not always in 80% range, but up to 80%. So depending on what type of storage you need, of course, with higher performance, it'll be less, but it'll still be a savings on top. So currently, for example, at a lowest price package currently runs at $2 a month for 1 terabyte. Which is very competitive and compared to centralized. Filecoin is actually offering much cheaper services. So even in a much distributed level, Filecoin is much cheaper. But we are very competitive when it comes to pricing compared to distributed and centralized. How we're able to achieve that is that you don't have a single entity just using, so we're using unused capacities at the data center level, at the office level, at the workspace level, at the retail level. So all this is kind of idle capacity. So we're not trying to, let's say, take away, we're kind of creating a new niche, I would say. We're not trying to, right now, at this moment, we're not competing directly with the big boys because, of course, we don't have that technology capacity currently. But we're able to offer those in, let's say, extra incentives for users, like the privacy and the compliance and the cost effectiveness, in order to attract certain users that really want to look at that aspect, right? So especially the privacy part, right? But I think that this is the main reason why we're able to offer a cheaper price, is because the node operators on the ecosystem on the network are day-to-day people that have idle capacity lying around at wherever they are in the world.
And going along with that, so let's say I've got a computer that I'm not using and I want to participate somehow. How do I go about that?
So there are minimum requirements for that, but if you meet that minimum threshold, you're able to allocate. So all you need is IAGON to stake. It's kind of a trust bond between the network and yourself, because if you think about it, if anyone could do it, what can happen is kind of a shutdown all at once scenario where you could do that kind of attack. Let's say if you're a bigger company or even a competitor that really wanted to ruin the reputation of the system. The best way to do it is just go on the ecosystem, run as many nodes as possible. If there's no trust bond there, right, you don't have any kind of entry to the network, and you just run any devices. And at the same time, at a certain time, you just shut all the devices down. Now, that's not good for the system, because now you just lost all the shards within the ecosystem, and it's people that store their files, they're completely lost, right? So the trust bond is with the IAGON token. You stake it as a trust bond, and you can only, when you unstake it, it takes 3 months, because that's following compliance regulations, because you need at least 3 months warning for people to remove their files from the network. Oh. So here you have to unstake, it's kind of money bond, where you kind of buying IAGON tokens and staking it on the network. So the minimum requirements are 20 megabytes upload, download, and then you have 1 terabyte and a minimum, and then the read-write speed has a minimum as well. So as long as you meet those criteria, you can allocate your storage space to the network. You fall within different tiers, of course. So the higher your internet speed, the higher your read-write speed on your hard disks, then the bigger tier you fall into. So for example, tier 10 is our highest. You earn more as a storage provider.
Okay, and one more, Umed.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's probably the case that people who really care about decentralization the most, right, are Web3 natives, people that are building in Web3. Who in the space would you say are your biggest customers? Like, what types of projects are really drawn to the services you offer?
Well, it's surprising, actually, because we actually first were targeting the retail consumers, right? And that was our goal, and we still are. We're going to have a kind of a Dropbox-like solution by end of November this year, to improve upon our current offerings. But since actually a couple of years ago, a lot of the actually attraction has been organic through enterprise. So we've been lucky enough to basically send our let's say, we present our ideas in a, let's say, a manner where it was able to attract enterprises. So we have Worth Group, and we even have Hamburg Volksbank, which are both German companies. Worth Group is probably the bigger one. It has, I think, around 20 to 30 billion annual revenue. And we're working on them with IP monetization, protecting IP for intellectual property of 3D parts, using storage, and also at the same time automated royalty payouts to their vendors and to IAGON and to Worth Group. We also have Hamburg Volksbank, which is briefly, they want to protect their patient clientele data, or they want to offload their patient clientele data. They don't want to be liable for any of the data that they basically hold. So they want to give the users the power in terms of what they want to share, who they want to share it with, and offer kind of a incentive for the users to share their data. And there's a few others as well. For example, Fireblocks is a Web3 native company, but they've come about, and we've been able to attract enterprises because they've really and they've organically approached us, which is this was the surprising part, where they had actually engaged the discussion and not the other way around, because a lot of Web3's companies actually reach out, and of course we did that too, but in this case, we had all this organic interest coming to us.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Yes, Dr. Nav, I definitely saw the discussion on X about the integration of Fireblocks.
Yeah.
And I cannot thank you enough for actually taking the lead. And this is what I like about teams like yours in the Cardano ecosystem, that just goes out there and builds stuff and doesn't ask like for funds ahead of time and things like that. But it's good that no matter what the outcome is on the funding side, that you still committed yourself and said, okay, we're integrating Fireblocks that anybody else can use on the Cardano ecosystem. Yes, we're doing it for ourselves, but we're making it available to everybody else. So I would like to thank, on behalf of the Cardano community, your efforts there.
Thank you.
But can you delve a little bit into the staking part? I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there is a hardware that you guys are selling to run nodes on your system. Can you tell us how much it costs and what is the minimum amount of for those who want to run their own sort of custom nodes and participate in the network, is how many IAGON tokens they need to stake in order to be able to as a minimum to participate?
Yeah. Well, it's $500 in IAGON tokens per terabyte. So that's the entry level. So it depends on, it's up to you how much you want to stake. So depending on how much you stake, that's the amount of rewards in IAGON you get. So you also get 90% of the subscription fees that are coming through the network. So anyone that utilizes storage, it's kind of like Airbnb, where we take a 10% cut, and then 90% goes to the node operators that are being utilized. But if you want to be, the Cyclone is what you're talking about in terms of the plug and play device. So we are not selling it currently, but we're working on a new web shop, which we're collaborating with multiple partners, where they have their own skins in terms of the Cyclone color schemes and whatnot. So you're able to purchase different kinds of brands, which also have the IAGON logo, but have different art depending on who we're collaborating with. And currently the prices aren't set, but the first batch actually, if believe it or not, people are benefiting from it, even if they're not running the node, because the RAM price and the SSD prices went up through the roof. So you can actually make a profit or even sell it. It's not vendor locked either, so you can even use it as a NAS device, or even actually run a Cardano node on it if you choose to. So if you don't want to run an IAGON node, you can just reformat it and run a Cardano node. So it's very, powerful small device, and we were reselling it because we wanted to sell a easy plug and play device for non-tech people. So we wanted. There was a lot of people that on Discord and X asking to contribute to the network, but found it very difficult for them to set up a node or run the node software. So what the Cyclone plug and play idea was to make it easy for them to participate in the network. And with the OS, it makes it a few clicks and you're off basically running a node, right? So it's simple, very easy, intuitive UI where you can just set up and run a node. And it's RAID 1. So you have if you purchased the Pro package, it was 18 terabytes RAID 1. So 36 if you don't run a RAID. And basically also comes with SSD, comes with multiple ports, comes with a micro SD. It it's really a fully packaged machine. So if you guys are curious about it, you can go, I think it's cyclone.iagon.com. You can check out all of the specs there. The cost will vary this round, because last round what we did was we covered the shipping costs worldwide, and so you just purchased a device. And this round, shipping will not be free, especially with the geopolitical situation going on, and SSD prices and the RAMs are really high. So we'll decide. We haven't announced any dates yet. We don't know yet exactly when the second will launch, because of the logistics are very disturbed in the world. So we'll see when that is launched. But that's the plug-and-play device. And but you can also run your own node, so it doesn't have to be a Cyclone plug-and-play. If you want a laptop or a PC, or even a data centers, if you're a data center listening out there, then you can also contribute to the network with bare metal devices. And there we have different types of software. So we have node diversity as well. We have CLI, Windows, Linux, Apple as well, Mac OS, QNAP, NAS, a NAS device, so Synology, sorry. And then, so it's available for all.
That's awesome. Now, just to basically close the conversation, the role of the token, right? It is a medium of payment for the token. It's a way to bond the storage capacity and all that, and it's also a governance token. Is that correct?
It will be a governance token. Yes, okay. We haven't done the governance yet, but the governance model will be different, a little bit different than most token projects. We're building something called Stature, which is reputational layer. So it'll assess the contributions of the token holder as a whole. Basically, it'll take into account how much IAGON tokens you're holding, if you're participating as an LP, if you're participating as a delegator, if you're participating in staking, if you've owned a Cyclone, anything that revolves around the ecosystem contributions. And if you've done more, you get a better score. And based on that score is how you're allocated, eventually royalties, for example, coming in from Worth Group. This is separate from the storage subscriptions. So royalties distributed that are coming in from enterprise deals, right? And a governance will be based on this as well. So first, it's not one-to-one, it's based on your reputation. So you get more voting power if your score is higher.
Oh, that's a great way of managing governance. But for those people who want to stake or run a node, what is the reward rate at this point? Annual reward rate, and what's the situation with the supply? Is there a max supply, and where is the issuance coming from?
Yeah. So we have all of our wallets labeled for ease of access with ADA handle. Everything's labeled from development to incentives to ecosystem to all the funds are labeled. You can also have a look at the transparency stuff that we've done. We made it easy for token holders to assess all of this and hold us accountable if there's any kind of outflows that are irregular. And for people that are staking, you get about 20% APY, up to 20% APY if you're in tier 10. Obviously, it is lower on the lower tiers. So if your device isn't that as strong, so you're earning about 3%. So it's between 3 to 20%, depending on where you fall within the tier system.
All right.
And they're earning rewards for providing these idle capacities. So you're earning IAG rewards for this. The dilution is over 15 years, if I'm not mistaken. And the total supply is 1 billion. And most of the allocation is for the reward for the community incentives.
What's the percentage of allocated out of that 1 billion?
It's around 50%.
Yeah. 50. Wow. Okay. Wow. Yeah. This is pretty big. Yeah. All right. Anything else? Tom, I don't want to hog the conversation here.
No, there's so many different avenues. I'm a little bit curious. What do you kind of see as what's developing and what's the future for compliance when it comes to decentralized storage?
I think we're in a good space, at least for IAGON, because I think that we've taken this into GDPR became only relevant in 2018, which is a European regulation, very, and I think that this kind of made like it's kind of created a blueprint for how to do regulation, data regulation. A lot of companies, a lot of countries are following this type of regulation and adjusting their regulation accordingly. So I think that enterprise adoption will only happen if compliance is adhered to. And it's not going anywhere. I think a lot of people have this, cyberpunk mentality, which is fine. I'm not saying it's wrong. I think it's good to have a combination of both, a cyberpunk and compliance, if it's possible. And I think here, compliance is going to once the compliance in the US is, finalized in terms of, what now they're looking at commodities and securities, and later they're going to, finalize a little bit more details that allow for, people to understand which rules and regulations to follow. The good thing is we're taking one of the most stringent data regulations, GDPR, in our architecture, right? So we're looking at that as kind of the cornerstone of how we should be doing things. And I think we'll be in a good place. But I think the people that will have trouble with distributed storage are the ones that don't adhere to it. Randomly allocating Falcon. Falcon is also recently adjusting their architecture because of this, right? They are, re-engineering.
And that's not easy to do, probably.
No, it's not. It's not easy at all. Yeah. And that's why we're happy with our IP and patent. That we are sitting in a safe place.
Oh wow. Dr. Nav, I wanted to kind of go in a different direction with this discussion. If you would like to tell us about the role of AI in the storage. Two questions in that front. One is, not AI, but kind of tangential. When you have storage solutions, you also have processors, right? Is there any plans in the future to basically use the compute, or maybe have a mixture of nodes that are compute heavy and storage heavy, et cetera, et cetera? And the second question is around AIs, and especially AI agents, and how do they come into the picture when it comes to your strategy going forward?
Yeah, so for us, mostly machine learning will be used. We're not implementing AI in a current form, but machine learning will be using in terms of learning the behavior of the node operators and optimizing the shard allocation according to that. So for example, AI agents, as we like to call them, can basically distribute the shards and optimize it according to the subset the user selects. And we will have distributed compute, so we will have a distributed CPU and distributed GPU in the future. Certain reward allocation is already, let's say, allocated for that. So we have that in plan. That's not this year, but hopefully next year maybe is in the forefront of distributed compute and then GPU after that. So for other people, we want to actually provide the infrastructure and the kind of the layer to run apps on. We don't want to develop everything for running on this these distributed services. We do want to provide examples on what can be built on this kind of stuff, but I think at the later on, what we want is developers to come on and build their own apps on top of the infrastructure, allowing for the infrastructure to be used and utilized.
Well, that's awesome. There was a question I had. It just kind of escapes my mind, but maybe Tom can take over on this one.
Well, the AI topic is such a big one, and we were talking about AI pretty much every week when we're on with a new guest. I'm curious how AI is supporting your team and your own development capabilities these days. It's kind of one of the most interesting topics for people to kind of bat around, because by sharing ideas about how people are using AI in their workflows or to get things done, it's always inspiring for people to kind of take those ideas and cross-pollinate. So how are you seeing your work life change as a result of the new tools that are coming available?
To be honest, not much. We don't. The reason why is I think AI, in my personal opinion, is a bit overrated, and I think it's a bubble in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
which eventually will come down to what I think is AI is mostly like used for a honeypot where you can collect as much information as possible, and people are not realizing that this information can be stored right somewhere.
Yeah.
I love
So,
that topic, by the way. So you've taken this down a completely different route, and I want to go there. So
yeah, I'll answer your question first, and then you can take it that route.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
but for our workflow, we have an internal policy not to use AI in any of the critical infrastructure.
Okay.
We do it as a helpful tool. So, for example, to make, I think our marketing manager uses it to make marketing material. We use it for, internal like anything like very small as a tool to help improve certain things. But we don't use it in any of our control. This is one of the policies that we have internally.
But you could use though. I mean, there are AI models that you could use in a sort of air gapped environment where no information escapes and the model is run locally.
True. You could, but you'd have to give those tools access to something to give you an output, right? So that's where kind of it is possible definitely to use it and utilize it in a different way. The question is, how much do you want to use it? And we have read some research papers as well, where AI doesn't really improve upon the code.
Right.
It's about, I think the output is about 34% compared to what an actual senior developer would actually output in terms of quality.
Oh, that's fascinating. I love your take on that. And as I think through what you said there, I wonder if there's an element that makes it a particular risk to what you're building in specific, right? When you're storing people's information, you're already taking a very serious approach toward the privacy and the compliance side. And yeah, let's just be honest, right? A new research paper comes out every single week. There's like a new dimension of the nightmare elements, right? That the one that I love that maybe came out a month ago was, I think it might have been an Anthropic paper where they were talking about current state of AI is disastrous for run and maintain. So that that even for testing, that agents like to change the code base during testing. So I think that's a really responsible approach, and to, instead of go Wild West like everybody else, wait until things mature, and then if it makes sense, you can adopt things in the future. But I totally get where you're coming from. I want to hear. I kind of got a sense of what some of the risks in a broad sense, but this idea of a honeypot I haven't really thought through before. So what specifically are you thinking there?
My thinking is that and again, conspiracy theorists in this day and age are usually right.
Oh,
Definitely.
Let's rebrand that term right now. I'm doing a campaign right now for everybody to stop using that word, and now we're saying conspiracy realist.
Comparison.
From a conspiracy realist perspective, what is it that you think?
I think that in a real world, I think that what is happening here is the data is being. This is why a lot of money is being invested into AI, right? Think about it. First, there was Facebook, which is a free software, which is a great way to collect data, sell it to third parties, and they're profiting off of that. This is why Facebook is free. A lot of people don't know that, right? But this is one of the main reasons. As people got away from Facebook and use other social media, all this is data collection, right? You're storing information somewhere. Now, AI is coming into the picture, making it very easy to use tools and answer all your questions. But now they know everything about you. Now they know everything, all your information, whatever you upload, even if they say they don't. And that's a lot of the companies that are prior to AI or any open AI and others, Facebook also said these in their terms and conditions, that they don't, they keep their data safe and whatnot, but they've been fined multiple times. All these big companies have been found guilty of this, right? Of these data breaches. And these data breaches happen often. So there's no, let's say, real reason for us to believe that that's not going to happen with OpenAI, ChatGPT, and all these other tools that are coming out, right? You have, what's the other one? Claude as well. And so this is, for me, it's an easy way to collect data. If you're a company and you want to collect as much information as possible, this is the easiest way to do it, because you're getting information from people. They're inputting everything, conversations. I've seen people put conversations in ChatGPT, and I've seen people put their legal stuff, healthcare records, and everything on these tools, right? And sometimes I question them and ask them, are you sure you want to do that, right? This is, if you don't care about that stuff, that's completely fine. But over time, I think that this might be hurting people, right? Because then you have some kind of a profile made of you, of this is how you are as a person, and
combined with your genetic imprint from your 23andMe account. And
exactly. But we're getting that route, basically.
I love the way that you're thinking about this. And as you're going through that thought process, it's like, oh my gosh, we're going to be fooled again. Facebook is the best example, because who would have thought that sharing pictures of your food and your pets could go in a direction where it literally almost leads to the breakdown of society. Right?
We barely talk to each other these days with social networks and all that. But Dr. Nav, I have to push a little bit on that idea, and I totally get the concern that they're collecting all the data, but in the case of Facebook, you definitely could see why that data was important, because they were turning around and selling it, right? In terms of AI, I think their priority is to train and retrain their models so that they stay relevant. So they cannot use the information from 2016 to give you an answer that is relevant in 2026. I know that whenever you ask a question, I think they go crawl the internet for the modern sort of information, the up-to-date information, and give you the answer. So how do you think we should protect, or we could protect the rights of users in this case? And I, as you were talking, I kind of started thinking maybe they should use you guys to store the information and encrypt it with the customer. So let's say that I'm using ChatGPT and I have my own keys, and I say, okay, well, you could use you can store the information, but any use case will have to be approved by me. So there's two keys, right? One is the company and the other is you. And every time they need to access your data, they need to tell you why. And then you need to click OK. So that's one of the ways to do this. And the only reason why they could, be the prevailing sort of sources of AI compute would be that they would be 10x better than the open source. Now, there are open source models that give you not identically, but marginally the same outputs, but they could be run in your own environment. You don't have to send any information to ChatGPT or anybody else. So I'm kind of watching these two sort of, places for information. If there is a breakout and the private providers are consistently better, then yes, we're going to go into the direction of them collecting information, at which point there's going to be a question of how do you store the data, and maybe IAGON can help. And if there's always something like Linux has done in the server industry, there's a free software and you could have a free AI, then I think they will have a bigger issue to justify their valuations there. But the general population is going to win because you will have the same amount of compute on your laptop. So where do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I think that I think that's the idea, right? Where you could use distributed storage to store data for these types of companies. Do I think it's going to happen? No. But I think that you do put up a good point, I guess. But my question is this: I'll put up a question to your question, I guess. Um, why do you think that companies are spending billions and billions on a company that makes no money?
Well, I mean, it's a very traditional question in finance, and I could tell you that because they believe in the growth. So if you think that the growth is going to outpace any projections that you might have, or if the growth justifies the valuation, and this happened with Amazon. Amazon was a loss-making company for decades, and people bought the company and had all sorts of justifications for that growth, and it panned out for the investors, because in the beginning, Jeff Bezos would be like, I don't care about the bottom line. Yes, we were making losses, but this isn't the phase of the company to discuss profits. We are ramping up, and they might be in that sort of phase, and that's how the valuations work. But again, to your point, those valuations could be unjustified. And when it's unjustified, then you'll, especially if you have competition from the open source, then you basically are but yeah, I mean, my answer to your question is because they have growth trajectories that justify these valuations.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to think about it: long-term growth. But from my point of view, I don't think it's justified in the amount of money that's going in. To the output that's coming out, I don't think it'll ever be profitable. That's why I think AI is a bubble, in my opinion. And that the only reasoning that you could give is, where they say the new saying, data is the new gold, right?
Mhm.
So data is way more important in this scenario. If I were to conclude the whole story and bring it about,
Mm-hmm.
why revenue doesn't really matter for them, right? It's because data matters more for them.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, Dr. Nav, I wanted to, I remembered my question, by the way. If you have time, I would like to ask this question. So you were using Cardano, right, to have access, to give access to the clients and anybody who wants to do storage. My question to you is, do you think that could be the bottleneck in the future in terms of like how slow or how fast the chain operates every 20 seconds and things like that? And, if that's not the bottleneck, then what is the bottleneck, and what are you gonna, where do you think the bottleneck in current, form is, and what are you guys doing to address it?
Well, the only bottleneck I see in Cardano currently is the users that are using on chain, right? I guess that's more of an ecosystem-wide problem rather than an IAGON problem
Mm-hmm.
or a Cardano problem. Well, maybe it is a Cardano problem actually, but it hopefully comes into the better. I think what Cardano provides is the security layer that we're looking for, the decentralization that we're looking for, and that's important for data, right? Data storage and access of storage. So it's been also the robustness and the reliability of Cardano is also there, right? That's one of the reasons why we pivoted from Ethereum to Cardano. And also the cost effectiveness in terms of per transaction compared to Ethereum at that time, much lower, right? So for us, I think, at least for us in our use case, we don't have many bottlenecks with Cardano. The only one is the users, and how we're solving that is actually making it accessible to other chains. So we'll be chain agnostic, meaning that users can access, the storage via other main nets, right? But now we have to just maybe reorder and make sure that we pinpoint and tell the user, hey, Cardano's probably the most reliable, or one of the most secure ones as well. Where we can maybe give the user some information on which one we recommend, and I'll make the other ones available as well. But then tell them that, hey, your reliance is on a network that has maybe downtime, or it doesn't have as good a security as the other ones.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. I firmly believe that UTXO has an incredible future. It's kind of, in some way, even though it's what Bitcoin is built on, it's still, to me, one of the best kept secrets in Web3. And I think it has yet to have its breakout moment when, you know, like all the gaps that exist in the Ethereum ecosystem and on EVM that UTXO addresses. So I believe that that time will come as well.
Yeah.
Definitely highly secure. Dr. Nav, if you have any parting thoughts and you would like anything to say to our audience, please, this is the moment. Take it away.
Just if you have any questions, just reach out. We're very vocal on X and also on Discord. So if you guys want to follow us, give us, go to website iagon.com and you scroll to the bottom of the footer. There's all the links to our socials. Join our Discord group. That's where all of our technical team is as well. I'll be there as well. So if you have any questions, just reach out there. But thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for the really great discussion, Dr. Nav, and best of luck with your project.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Tom, that was a great interview, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really great. So IAGON is a really great project. There were so many things I learned that I didn't know about before, and the things that they're working on that are coming in the future, also groundbreaking. But I think the thing that I found really interesting was Dr. Nav's perspective on AI, which, you and I both, everybody, we're just inundated about information about AI. First of all, it's, I'm not, I hear a lot about it, and I get a lot of the information, and I understand some of the doomerism around it. I think that, in a lot of ways it's justified. And at the same time, we have the hype, right? Like he's talking about the bubble. I get that too. Both of those things live in the same space. But this is the first time that I've really heard somebody seriously put forward that there might be a risk around AI just intentionally being a data collection mechanism. And I get his point that, gee, we've seen that before. I think it's something to seriously consider.
Yes, I mean, he definitely makes a point about the depth of data collection. When you think about Facebook, it has a limited view of who you are. Of course, they use different kinds of algorithms to make to create a profile, but those are guesses. Maybe they're accurate guesses, but they are still guesses. Now with with AI, if you want an answer for a specific question, you have to provide some basic data to it. And if those get recorded, then you have a much, much in-depth profile for a user. He definitely raises issues that are quite important. But it's a nascent industry. My take on it is that, there's two ways this whole thing could transpire. And one is that we're going to go into a centralized sort of way of doing things. And in that situation, you definitely have risks of your data being manipulated or used against you or leaked to the third party, which isn't news, by the way, in the world of Web 2, because everybody's social security is out there. We know that. And the alternative is that if the open source versions of these models become very good or marginally at the same level, then we will have the luxury of running all these nodes on our machines, especially if recently I think Microsoft issued an LLM that used CPUs, for instance, and not GPUs. And if the development goes in that direction, it's going to be bad for the Claudes of the world or the Chat GPTs of the world, because their valuations will be unjustified. But the humanity will gain access to private sort of LLMs that are just as good, and you don't leak the data. So where we're going to end up, it's still an open question. I kind of think that, if the centralized LLMs or centralized AI provides 10x better product, then probably majority of people will onboard there. But if that happens, if that were to happen, I would assume that the lawmakers would see the risk and try to regulate these entities around, like the way that we have in the United States. We have HIPAA, we have banking industry sort of secrecy act or whatever, so you don't leak the data about the users and whatnot. So
well,
we'll probably have something
there are so many things to talk about here.
Yeah.
I think this is why this topic is so interesting. Yeah, because you bring up the lawmakers, right? I I'm really skeptical of their ability to understand and keep up with what's going on. I mean, lawmakers were looking at social media early on, and then it just comes out at some point that yes, Facebook has servers that are connected right to the CIA and the NSA, just like every telecom does, right? So what kind of oversight is there really? And then when you're talking about the the rapidly evolving state of AI as its own actor, we know that it's doing all kinds of crazy things every week. So the cool part and the fun part, which also has consequences, of course, but the part that I get excited about is this to me ties in specifically to why blockchain is critical infrastructure for the future of the world, because it's really the only mechanism to put guardrails around AI in a sense. And that's specifically what we're doing with Apex Fusion right now, working with teams to modify the protocol layer to put those guardrails in place. So it's a huge opportunity for our industry, right? That the rest of the world really doesn't know. The convergence of AI and blockchain, if AI is going to continue and it's going to do more important things and things that require that kind of structure to be reliable, blockchain is then an inevitability, or some version of that technology is an inevitability. But at the same time, it's changing by the hour.
Oh
And
yes, I mean, I don't expect the lawmakers to like start understanding it anytime soon, but maybe when the dust settles down the road, maybe
I mean,
somebody's
there's
gonna do
so
something.
there's so much dust, bro. I mean, the lawmakers, like, because honestly, like, think about like what any lawmaker has to contend with these days. There's just too much information.
I don't think they know anything, to be honest.
They know jack
my
shit.
my my interactions with lawmakers, and no offense to the ones who probably know a thing or two about the blockchain or AI and whatnot, maybe they have degrees, I don't know, but usually it's their staffers. They hire really bright individuals to basically give them
They have
talking points. They just don't have capacity to
they're
process
they're
so
probably
much
using
information.
Chat GPT. Their staffers are using Chat GPT, right? So here I want to bring up a scenario. This is kind of unrelated, but to me, it's an example of the world we're living in now that I think is so fascinating. So every week, probably that's not even right. Probably every day, if you're looking, there is some mind-bending new thing that we're figuring out across scales. Like you can throw a rock and hit one.
Yeah,
We're literally living in a comic book right now. It's not a joke. So I
some
don't
might
know.
call it singularity, but
Well,
okay.
yes, it's definitely that. That word's been thrown around a lot these days, for sure. We're definitely in it. Um, I don't know if you saw this post, and I'll try to pull it up later and share it with you so we can look at it. But it's somebody who works in X who is directly involved in content moderation. And he works at X, he posted on X, and basically the gist of the post was, guys, we are blocking so much content right now. We have seen an exponential growth in the amount of bullshit posts and spam coming from everywhere. It's like it's escalating at an incredible pace. He made a prediction, and this is a insane prediction. I hope it doesn't happen because it's really over the top prediction. He said in 3 months, X, Telegram, your email, your text messages, your WhatsApp, all communication channels are going to be flooded with so much spam that they'll basically be unusable. And the scenario he's painting is that the bar has gone so low for somebody to generate spam and to deploy multiple agents to generate spam, and for the agents to deploy agents to generate spam,
Oh
that he
wow.
that you can get to a point where you have 100 fake emails in your inbox that are all impersonating things about you, impersonating people coming across as being very, and you've got one email that you actually need buried in 100 emails. What happens when that happens every day?
It's mental
Now,
overload. I don't think people start using anything, right?
right. So of course, these companies are going to create countermeasures, and they're going to work on that, and that will evolve. But I'm just raising the point that, we're almost not equipped to foresee the directions that this will go, and it's going in all directions simultaneously. It's like, that's why it's kind of really interesting, you
Do,
know.
do you how if you were in charge, how do you think you would solve this problem though?
I mean, I don't have an answer to that at all, right? I mean, the first thing you're going to think of is, how do I use AI to stop the AI?
In that scenario, the only winner is you know the data centers that house all these GPUs, because you're like, I don't care who I sell this GPU to, and AI providers, because they can basically say, okay, I'm servicing this bad guy to generate bad content or
Yeah, yeah.
undesirable content, and then there's another good guy trying to catch the bad guy, but I'm making the money. So
Well,
that could be the end result, I think.
it can.
But
And then
also, I think, go
yeah,
ahead,
go ahead.
go ahead.
You first.
No, but I also, I think maybe there will be a push towards verifying your humanity
Yes,
on chain.
I was thinking that, right? So there is an important proof of life element here, I think, that will eventually happen. He also made the point that, and I think this is happening in all directions too, like when you have this proliferation, there comes a point when producing spam is not profitable anymore, right? Because just think about it, like when anybody can do it, and you've got, these groups of people in foreign states, and it's being weaponized and all these things, like there's a saturation point beyond which it doesn't make sense. And we're seeing this with, software development. We're going to be seeing this like all over the place, where you have so much abundance that how we think about these things fundamentally changes, right?
Yes, and you raise a really good issue here about the abundance, and I think to a certain degree, I think X wouldn't mind having all this explosive growth, because it's good for the valuation, even though the accounts are fake and all that. It's a different kinds of a bot, basically, right? Maybe they will weed out the bad ones, but the quotes from famous sort of Zen teachers portraying as a beautiful woman basically might still proliferate, because there is a demand for that from real people.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it right there. We're going to have lots of really wise Zen teachers that are all hot chicks. That's a given.
Yes, but I think the point actually was trying to make was that the constant, or um, the pressure point will be the human attention. When you're feeding your content to, let's say, all that social networks and whatnot, you don't want, okay, maybe you do to a certain degree, you don't want it to be consumed by other AIs, right? Because that kind of like, who is making the decision to purchase something based on whatever you're feeding. And maybe AIs will be doing that, maybe it won't be. It's a good sort of
It is.
tangent to basically explore for another
You
time, but I mean that's
you
yeah.
bring up so many things. Let's explore it a little bit now, because it's too interesting, right?
Right.
So, I had an investor talk to me last week. I was talking about, what is their thesis and what are they working on, and she was talking about ad tech. I was like, I don't know. I don't know if you should really take ad tech seriously. I see a future where there is a proliferation of so much marketing that it just goes to zero, and people will just opt out. Like ad tech, I'm sure there are people that are working on this now, but it's going to have to be completely reinvented, because what we're really talking about here is it's beyond an attention economy. It's an attention war. It's an attention battlefield. People are fatigued, they're tired, right? Because what we're seeing happen, and I hope this bifurcates, I think it will. I was drawn to Web3 in the beginning because it was about community. And in pockets, it's still about community, right? Cardano is a very strong community. It's why I love it. It's really about people at the end of the day for me. But Web3 is becoming not a place for a community, it's becoming a place for machines. And there are going to be industries rising up that are about marketing to agents. How do you get an agent's attention? How do you get an agent to come to your blockchain and participate in your agentic economy? We don't want X to be that place. Like, agents don't need X posts. Agents need to talk in a platform that works for agents. So, I mean, I just think it's literally like flipping the table. You know what I mean? It's like all these things are going to have to be rethought and restructured, and it's happening so fast. Like, I'm learning about new cottage industries every week. So, and maybe we talked about this on the podcast. You remember when you had on Brandon Bennett from Agent Systems?
Yeah.
Right? And he was telling us about how there are now businesses that are spawning to provide AI insurance. So to protect the company against what their AI does. This is happening everywhere. It's like impossible to keep up with. It's really fun.
Oh, it is a real risk when it comes to AI, especially in early stages when we don't have any standards that define the work of AI or kind of keep track of it. And there are real issues around AI taking, making decisions on their own and not telling you and basically, going rogue or, however you just define that, just basically not following your prompts and whatnot. But I think, and I might be wrong, but I think this whole thing, the proliferation of AI agents will push us towards trying to find solutions for identity online. Right now, anybody can open an account or a wallet on a blockchain. You don't know if it's an AI or a person. And interact with the blockchain. I think blockchains will have to find a way to integrate identity. I think that's next big sort of hurdle for the blockchain to, especially in light of AI agents proliferation, it will be an acute problem. And then I think what will happen with ad agencies, they would be pitching you, the advertiser, a portfolio. It would be like, hey, I have a portfolio of 70% humans, and to advertise to actual humans who have agency and money and will make purchases, you have to pay me more, or there will be specialized AI agents. But I think at the end of the day, behind every AI agent there is an entity, a conscious entity, whether it's a company or a person. It's just that their reach is just going to be so, big, I guess, or marketing to an AI that belongs to a multi-billion-dollar company could be probably very profitable too, if you can do that, without having to talk to their managers and whatnot. Maybe the AI will filter out the noise and pick whatever product it wants to buy and things like that.
Yeah. I think that's really important. What you said about filtering out the noise. Like, if we verge on a world where I get something that that is really obviously targeted to me that I want, like when I almost never click on ads, but every once in a while I'll see the exact thing that I want, right? Like I was scrolling the other day and there was like an ad for jeans, and I need some new jeans, and they look like they were a good fit, so I clicked on it, right? I didn't know last month that I would be interested in jeans. But I have to there's just too much noise right now. I have to scroll through tons and tons of stuff, right? So maybe there's something there, right? And
yeah, I could see the personal AI scouring the internet, but knowing you personally, having your profile on your terms.
yes.
And I can see how that could be stored somewhere on chain, encrypted, by the way.
Yeah, because I would do that. I would actually opt into that if I had my own AI that I was giving instructions to find me things that it thinks I would be interested
and
in.
build your profile, and then it just goes out and says, hey, there are five things that you might be interested in based on whatever you've been telling me.
Completely reinvigorated my whole concept of ad tech now with that.
No.
I take back what I said about that.
No, I think blockchain is such a crucial element, as you said, in adoption of AI responsibly. And I think this is where we're going to go at some point. because it's the only logical way of doing things, or a responsible way of doing things. Yeah.
Yeah, such a great topic.
Absolutely. We definitely veered off from the decentralized compute or decentralized storage, but I think, I'm hoping that it generated some value for our listeners, but
Well, Dr. Nav did it because with his interesting conspiracy realist perspective, it's too much to pass up for sure.
it's always good to have a healthy skepticism, like people tend to like run into the new technology and whatnot, me included, by the way. So I just built a couple of things and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so great. I don't have to hire a developer to do these things for me, and they work.
Yeah, are you going to release the poker app?
It's up and running already on the website. But I'm kind of exploring the way to basically post it on this is my next challenge, personal challenge, to actually do an app store and an app. And AI gives you all the steps necessary to do that. So you have to know what you're doing. I'm not saying that anybody from the street is gonna create these things. And I know the infrastructure, I know the code. It's just I don't want to write it. so I can review the code and say, okay, well, this is fine, this makes sense, and then somebody else writes it for me. So that's how it works.
Do we have time to go a little bit longer? Because I have one more thing I mentioned.
Yeah.
You inspired me, right? So
sure.
I think this is kind of what you're doing with some of these apps you're building and these different projects that you're working on is really inspiring for listeners and for anybody. And it's kind of the basis of all my personal conversations these days with people who really haven't taken the dive in, and just how easy it is to do something really unique with so many dependencies taken away, the timeline moving really fast. And I think it's useful to hear real world examples and hear stories about how people have used these tools to do stuff. There's a potential for wealth redistribution that is active right now in the world. And I want to give a story. So this is about our friend who you know and love also, Jason Carroll, who hopefully we'll have on the show sometime, who he has a company called Coherence AI that I work with him on. And as he's been bootstrapping his company, he is managing a bar in the city of Kansas City. It's called the Uptown Lounge. And so he had this problem that his team need to do inventory on everything at the bar, the cups and the ice and the straws and all those things. So he went in one day and he used Claude Code. Maybe it was even Cowork. It probably was. He probably didn't even need Claude Code for it. He used Claude Code to build an inventory app for the bar. And he cut the time down to conduct inventory from 5 hours to 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's even more interesting, right? Because this was a manual process before. It's a small business. It wasn't using anything for inventory because they couldn't justify the cost. And the process before was that the employees would be given a piece of paper. They would go in to the inventory and they would have to manually count and record everything. And then they would have to update it on another piece of paper. And they basically had like this big clipboard that then the manager would go and reconcile and do the ordering. It's a very manual process. A byproduct of that is employees didn't take it seriously. They were turfing it. They would sometimes not do the counts properly, or just, because it takes 5 hours to go through all the stuff. So what he did, and this was think about it this way. He is actively engaged in this process. He's seeing what the employees are doing. He knew right away there was a way to make this simpler. So the way he designed it was, you literally just take a photo of your inventory list when you take a photo of your invoice when you have the delivery, and it automatically updates into the system. Wow. It does the counts, and then it uses AI to tell you what you need to order. So immediately, what you're saying is you're not buying things you don't need. You're not holding things on hand that aren't being used. Like, you have things in inventory that are never being used, right? If you don't know what that is, you don't know to decrease the counts. So it's directly affecting the bottom line. And then think about it, in one day, instead of having somebody do inventory for 5 hours, it's cut down for 30 minutes. So it's got benefits to the bottom line. It's got efficiency gains. It's got morale gains because, people don't have to put up with that anymore.
Yeah, they do stuff they like.
He just did this in an afternoon. And of course, everybody loves it. And then his own staff are talking about it. And he had somebody who had a friend who managed a bakery on the other side of town, learned about it, and now they want to see the product.
Nice.
So I'm like, hey, you got to productize this, and we'll just take it around to every single bar in the city. And so, what he's breaking it out, and he calls this particular version of the product Bar OS.
Mm-hmm.
Got a version Restaurant OS, and he's got a version Food Truck OS, and they all feed to the same back end. So, this idea that I'm sharing right here, anybody can go do this, and you can do this in specific areas of your own business or the company you work for. It's a game changer to do. And you just need the specific knowledge related to the problem that you see every day that no one is solving.
And you know what? I definitely agree with you here. And I think there's like projections of people, one company person, unicorns coming up. Because the only thing that's, when you have access to raw intelligence like, Claude or ChatGPT and whatnot, the only bottleneck is your imagination or your curiosity. I mean, even if you have no idea about what problem you want to solve, you can brainstorm that with the ChatGPT and say, hey, what's the biggest problem? Let me just, give me 10 big problems that humanity needs to solve. And, imagine you're like a X, Y, and Z, how would you approach it? And then it will give you basically a recipe for following this stuff. I mean, I did my app using probably 4 hours of compute, just doing that. And I'm like, let me see if I can explain poker to my child without having to like go into the boring stuff and just giving them a game to play. And what started as a single page, HTML page, game that you could just basically copy paste anywhere, it turned into a full-blown sort of back-end server with Monte Carlo simulations with 50,000 simulations that it runs and tells you the win rate and whatnot. So, I mean, it just like, and this is not the end. If I want to go take it into the App Store and build more bells and whistles, I can do that. And I don't need anybody else. And that's where the power comes from. It's like the only, bottleneck is basically your imagination. You don't really need that much, VC funding or going to, fundraisers or anything like that, because if your product works and there's a product market fit, it will start gaining tractions by, big, on its own. And yeah, maybe at some point you will raise funds, but at the very least, it will help you iterate different ideas.
Yeah. I think you used the right word there, right? This is, if you can find a fast route to product market fit. I mean, that's, companies that are well-funded have trouble finding that.
Especially those people, because there's bureaucracy involved in all of these things. That's why startups are efficient in finding these things. But anyway, but it's a fascinating topic. We could talk about it for hours. And I think, decentralized compute, decentralized storage, especially decentralized storage, if it goes in that direction, I think could definitely benefit from, because to me, it doesn't really make, if we go, let's say, if we go in the direction of centralized entities providing you with compute or, AI, and we realize the risks of, storing data and everything, then it will only be natural for, regulations to kick in and have the same sort of guardrails that we have with the healthcare industry. And if that becomes a reality, then it becomes an easy segue to go into the blockchain to store this data because it's secure, it's redundant, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really like so bullish on IAGON and its use cases. It's just, unless something dramatically different happens, but I think at this point it's just an amazing use case.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope we have them back on again. They've got so many cool things coming.
Definitely.